The elevator doors opened to reveal her new security detail, two discreet but clearly capable men who would now be permanent parts of her daily routine. As they escorted her to the waiting car, rain-soaking Seoul streets, Minji couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into something far more complicated than a standard professional agreement. Unseen by her, Tae-hyun stood at his office window upstairs, watching the car pull away. His expression was thoughtful as he absently rotated the simple band he always wore, a familiar habit from long working days. Tomorrow, he would receive a new formal badge representing their upcoming corporate partnership. This partnership, established for strategic purposes, was already beginning to shift into something more complex as two people who had operated behind strict professional boundaries found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory. The setting sun cast soft golden streaks across the penthouse floors as Min-ji stood by the wide windows, watching Seoul light up below. Her outfit, a refined design chosen by the PR team for its balanced professionalism and clean appearance, moved slightly as she inhaled to steady herself. The day had unfolded with precision. The morning signing ceremony, attended only by Hyun Seok and the required legal witnesses, had lasted exactly 23 minutes. The press briefing that followed was a smooth presentation of corporate communication, with Tae-hyun describing their partnership as a natural alignment built on shared objectives. Now, 12 hours later, she was officially part of the executive leadership team, and social media was filled with discussions about the Ice King's unexpected announcement. Min-ji, she turned to see Marina, the housekeeper, standing quietly at the suite entrance. Your evening preparations are complete. Tae-hyun will be arriving shortly. He just finished his conference call with the Tokyo branch. Even this evening followed a schedule. Minji adjusted the comfortable lounge clothing provided for her, another carefully selected item chosen to match the company's professional standards. Thank you, Marina, she replied, grateful that her voice remained steady. The older woman offered a small, understanding nod before stepping out. Left alone, Minji walked to the inside bathroom, its polished layout still unfamiliar. Her reflection showed someone who looked more composed than she felt. Neatly arranged honey blonde hair, subtle makeup from earlier events, and an overall appearance shaped by the PR team's careful planning. The soft sound of the bedroom door opening made her pause. She heard Tae-hyun's footsteps and the quiet rustle as he removed his suit jacket, setting his cufflinks neatly on the dresser. Minji, his calm voice carried through the door. He had begun using her first name during the press briefing, the tone steady and professional. Taking a slow breath, she stepped out. Tae-hyun stood near the window where she had been earlier, his figure outlined by the city lights. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, creating a less formal atmosphere. His suit jacket rested over a chair, and he had changed into indoor footwear to make the space feel more relaxed. The press coverage was favorable, he said, turning toward her. His tone remained businesslike. The stock increased 6 points after the announcement. I saw, she replied, grateful for familiar territory. Dongmin's shell companies reduced their activity around 2 p.m. Tae-hyun moved to the small refreshments area and poured 2 glasses of sparkling juice. A small toast to a successful collaboration? The slight humor in his tone made her give a brief smile. Something like that. She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing only for a moment before they both shifted naturally. You handled the press questions well, he noted, observing her with a thoughtful expression. Even the question about Seo Yeon. Yes, the reporter who tried to provoke tension by asking how it felt to succeed someone well known. Min-ji had calmly replied that she preferred focusing on future plans, earning an approving nod from Hyun Seok. The PR team's briefing was thorough, she said, taking a steady sip of her drink. The vintage was excellent, far better than anything she used to afford. They didn't instruct you to look at me the way you did when you answered, Tae-hyun replied, his tone lowering slightly. That part was entirely yours. She felt her face warm at the memory how she'd instinctively turned toward him during the press briefing, her reaction genuine despite the strictly structured nature of their partnership. Something subtle had passed between them, enough to make the reporters lean forward. Tae-hyun set down his glass and stepped closer, his presence prompting her to lift her chin to maintain eye contact. We should clarify expectations for this evening, he said plainly. Her pulse quickened. From this distance, she could see the faint exhaustion in his eyes. Long hours, endless pressure mixed with an unguarded sincerity she hadn't expected. The contract mentioned a 2-year timeline for long-term goals. He interrupted calmly. It didn't say anything about forcing anything on day one. She blinked. You're saying? You're not expecting what I'm saying, he replied, studying her face with quiet focus. Is that you're nervous? And I'd like to understand why. The gentleness in his approach unraveled her practiced composure. I've never been in this kind of arrangement before, she admitted, voice low but steady now. Not one this public, not one this high stakes. He absorbed that, something almost protective shifting in his expression. And you thought I would react how? He asked softly. That you might consider me unprepared, she said, or not strategic enough for this role. A short, disbelieving sound escaped him, half frustration, half surprise. Unprepared? Minji, you handled today better than half the executives I've worked with. His tone dropped, more sincere now. This changes nothing about your qualifications. Her breath caught not from his words alone, but from the unexpected reassurance beneath them. But the board isn't part of this conversation, he said firmly. Tonight isn't about public expectations. It's about stability, clarity, and making sure we begin this partnership on steady ground. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. There is no pressure tonight, he continued. No performance, no checklist. We're colleagues stepping into a complex arrangement, that's all. Relief hit her so sharply that her eyes stung. She quickly blinked, but one tear slipped free. He noticed immediately, not with alarm, but with a quiet, steady patience. This job is already intense, he added gently. You don't have to carry it alone. She inhaled shakily, realizing she'd been bracing herself for an entirely different conversation. He took a step back, not away, but enough to give her breathing room. Change into something comfortable, he said, his voice returning to a warm, even tone. I'll do the same. Then we sit, and we talk. No cameras, and no contracts. No audience. His gaze softened further. Just two people figuring out how to move forward, he finished. That's all tonight needs to be. In the bathroom, Minji found that Marina had laid out silk pajamas alongside the lingerie. As she changed, she heard Tae-hyun moving around the bedroom, the domestic sounds strangely comforting. When she emerged, he changed into black lounge pants and a soft gray t-shirt that made him look younger, almost gentle. He had already turned down the bed and was sitting against the headboard, legs stretched out on top of the covers. Patting the space beside him, he said simply, "Come here." Minji hesitated only for a breath before moving closer. She sat carefully, leaving a gap between them. But Tae-hyun immediately slid an arm around her waist and pulled her against his side, settling her head on his shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world. Better, he murmured. Now tell me about your mistreatment, the real story, not the brief version from your background check. The genuine softness in his voice shattered the last of her defenses. Words started spilling out about the experimental therapies, the nights she slept in hospital chairs, the false hopes and heavy disappointments, the endless medical journals she read searching for miracles. He listened, really listened. His hand moved gently through her hair, absent and comforting, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. The contract's medical coverage will give her access to any treatment she needs, he said when she finished. I'll have Hyun Seok push everything through by tomorrow. Her eyes burned again. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency, he said quietly. Now, your turn. Ask me something. Anything you want to know about your new husband. She sifted through 100 questions, then chose the one that wouldn't leave her mind. Why did you give me access to the company's financial data? The real reason. He exhaled slowly. Because when you asked, you looked alive. Not scared. Not negotiating. Alive. Like you wanted to build something, not just survive. His fingers continued brushing her hair. You reminded me of myself, before everything became about power and protection. The honesty in his voice hit her unexpectedly deep. Before she could stop herself, she leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to the side of his neck. He stiffened, breath catching. Careful, he whispered, his arm pulling her tighter. I'm trying to be honorable here. You are, she said softly, resting against him again. Now tell me about Tokyo. The call sounded intense. He did. They talked for hours about business, family, dreams, regrets. He told her about Hanuel's activism, his father's strict values, the vintage cars he restored whenever he needed peace. She told him about university debates, the foundation she hoped to build for families drowning in medical debt, and her secret obsession with romance novels. By the time midnight crept in, their bodies were relaxed, their tones softer, their breaths synced without effort. Taehyun nudged her gently. Go wash up. I'll fix the bed. When she returned, he'd arranged everything perfectly, as if making space for her was second nature. Sleep, he said, pressing a warm, steady kiss to her forehead before heading into the bathroom. Tomorrow starts early. Left alone in the huge, soft bed, Minji stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of running water and the quiet movements that somehow felt more intimate than anything else tonight. She had expected cold distance. She had expected a contract. She had expected duty. Instead, she found safety. She found warmth. She found a man trying earnestly to meet her halfway. And for the first time since the contract was signed, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this marriage wouldn't break her. It might heal her. She'd discovered layers to Taehyun that made her heart flutter in a decidedly non-contractual way. When he returned and slid under the covers beside her, she was already half asleep. His arm curved around her waist, drawing her back against his chest in a position that felt surprisingly natural. Rest, he murmured against her hair. I've got you. As she drifted off, Minji realized that somewhere between the contract signing and this moment, something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about business anymore. Wasn't just about heirs and company stability. By treating her inexperience as something precious rather than inconvenient, by showing genuine interest in her dreams instead of using her as a pawn, Taehyun had revealed a tenderness his walls couldn't hide. And that, she thought as sleep claimed her, might be the most wonderful discovery of all. In the darkness, Taehyun lay awake a while longer, marveling at how right she felt in his arms. He'd planned this marriage as a business arrangement, a shield against vulnerability. Instead, he'd found himself captivated by a woman whose quiet strength came wrapped in a sweetness that stirred something deep in him. What are you doing to me? He whispered to her sleeping form, pressing one more gentle kiss to her hair before closing his eyes. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night marked the beginning of a shift from a marriage of convenience to something far more powerful than either had dared imagine. 3 weeks into their marriage, Minji was working late in her office, surrounded by financial reports and market analyses. Blue light from her monitors flickered across flowcharts tracking Dongmin's corporate movements. Something in his latest pattern nagged at her. Found something interesting? She jumped at Taehyun's voice and looked up to see him leaning against the doorframe. Even this late, he looked impeccable, though the loosened tie hinted at his long day. Maybe. She pulled up a series of transactions. Look at Dongmin's acquisitions. He's not just using shell companies, he's targeting our supply chain partners. Taehyun stepped behind her, his presence steady and warm as he studied the data. The faint scent of his cologne brushed her senses, but she forced herself to focus. Here, she pointed. 3 pharmaceutical research companies, all bought through different shells, all with contracts tied to us. And the timing, what about it? His hand rested on her chair, fingers brushing her shoulder. They were all purchased 3 months before your divorce filing became public. She opened another document. And look at their research. Fertility treatments, reproductive medicine, genetic enhancement. Taehyun went very still. Show me the funding sources. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, revealing a maze of transactions. The money routes through Singapore, but if you trace it deeper, she highlighted a core thread. It all leads to Phoenix Global Investments. I've never heard of them. You weren't meant to. They were incorporated exactly 1 day after she hesitated. After what? After your first date with Seo Yeon. The air shifted. Taehyun straightened, turning toward the window as if the city lights might steady him. It wasn't chance, he said quietly. Meeting her at that gala, the timing, the speed of it, someone planned it. Min-ji rose slowly, torn between giving him space and offering comfort. Tae-hyun, there's more. Those pharmaceutical companies, they're all working on something called Project Phoenix. And the preliminary research, she swallowed, it involves fertility enhancement compounds. He turned sharply. What kind of enhancement? The files were heavily edited, but I kept seeing notes about increased birth rates and success probabilities, she said quietly. Whoever funded this, they were trying to engineer twins or triplets on purpose. A shadow crossed Tae-hyun's face. To secure an heir quickly, to complicate any marriage separation, to bind the wife to the company through children. Min-ji's breath caught. But that kind of manipulation, why go so far unless the company takeover was only the surface? Tae-hyun finished, stepping closer as he scanned her data again. These labs, these formulas, someone's using our resources for something else entirely. Before she could reply, a soft alert blinked on her screen, an anonymous message. It read, "Smart analysis, Min-ji C. But not every truth needs uncovering. Ask your husband about Project Phoenix, or perhaps speak to Seo Yeon." A chill swept through her. Tae-hyun's hand immediately found her shoulder, steadying her. Her office lights flickered once, then twice, as if someone had tapped into the building's power. A decorative glass panel on the wall vibrated and slipped from its mount, landing on her desk with a loud crack that made her jump. Tae-hyun pulled her toward him instinctively, shielding her with his arms. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, strained with worry. "I'm okay," she whispered, steadying her breath. Hyun Seok rushed in with the internal security team, alerted by the power fluctuation. "Check the entire floor," Tae-hyun instructed, his arms still around Min-ji. "Systems, access logs, everything, and have maintenance fix this room immediately." He turned back to her, concern softening his expression. "You're moving your office beside mine. I'm not negotiating." She wanted to argue, she really did, but the genuine fear in his eyes silenced her. "All right," she murmured. Later that night, after the building was cleared and her workspace was relocated, they sat in Tae-hyun's quiet penthouse office. She wore one of his spare shirts, the sleeves too long but comforting. "We need to go over everything you found," he said gently, handing her warm tea this time instead of wine. "No more surprises." She tucked her legs beneath her. "You think Dong-min has someone inside? Someone high-ranking?" "He must," Tae-hyun said. "The timing, the leaks, and Project Phoenix." He paused, then exhaled slowly. "There's something I never told anyone." Min-ji looked up, heart tightening. "Before Seo Yeon left," he said quietly, "she tried to convince me to invest in a research project she claimed would transform the fertility industry." "Let me guess," Min-ji whispered. "It was called Phoenix." He nodded, sitting beside her close enough that she felt his warmth. "I turned it down. The whole thing felt off." She was unusually upset about it. More pieces fell into place. "So they needed access another way," Min-ji said. "If you wouldn't support the project directly, they found a route through business acquisitions, through shell companies, through partnerships." She hesitated. "Through the marriage contract?" His head lifted sharply. "No." His voice was soft but unwavering. "Meeting you was never part of anyone's plan but mine." He lifted a hand, brushing her cheek with quiet tenderness. "You were the one thing they could never factor in. Too smart to influence, too honest to be used, too real to be part of a scheme." Emotion flickered through her chest like a spark. "So, what do we do now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Tae-hyun didn't hesitate. "We face it together," he said, his hand steady against her cheek. "You and I. No secrets. No distance. Not anymore. We fight back." His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer. "Together. No more playing defense. No more reacting to their moves. We find everything they're hiding, expose every connection, protect what's ours." "What's ours?" she whispered, hyper-aware of his proximity. Instead of answering, he kissed her. Unlike their previous careful kisses, this one was deep and passionate, full of the fear and protectiveness and growing feelings neither had fully acknowledged. When they parted, Both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. Everything, he murmured. The company? Our marriage? This thing growing between us that terrifies and thrills me in equal measure. She curled her fingers into his shirt, anchoring herself. I thought this was just business for you. It was supposed to be. His laugh was slightly unsteady. Then you walked into my office with your brilliant mind and kind heart, and suddenly business was the last thing on my mind. A notification on her tablet interrupted the moment. More data about Project Phoenix. But this time, as they studied the information together, something had shifted. His arms stayed around her waist, her head resting naturally against his shoulder as they worked. They were no longer just CEO and analyst, or even contract husband and wife. They were partners in every sense, facing the growing threats together. And somewhere across Seoul, in a carefully hidden research facility, Dong-min received an update about their discoveries. His expression held no warmth as he typed a message to his true partner, the woman who had orchestrated everything from the beginning. They're getting closer, Seo Yeon, time to move to the next phase. The response came quickly. Remember the plan. The Ice King's heart has finally thawed. Now we can truly unsettle him. But what neither of them knew was that love, real love, couldn't be used as a weapon. It could only make its bearers stronger. And in the penthouse office, surrounded by evidence of conspiracy but wrapped in each other's arms, Tae-hyun and Min-ji were discovering just how strong they could be together. The headlines splashed across every major financial news outlet the next morning. Exposed, the affairs that shook Seoul's business elite. Beneath it, intimate photos of Seo Yeon with Sung Ho Kang, dated months before the divorce filing, each one more revealing than the last. Min-ji stood in Tae-hyun's office, their office, now watching his reaction as he scrolled through the articles on his tablet. After 6 weeks of marriage, she'd learned to read the subtle signs of his emotions, the tightness around his eyes, the almost imperceptible clench of his jaw. They're trying to destabilize you before the shareholders' meeting, she said softly, moving to perch on his desk beside him. The timing's too perfect. Tae-hyun set down the tablet, rubbing his temples. Dongmin's work, no doubt, though how he got these photos actually. Min-ji interrupted, pulling up her own research on her laptop. I don't think it was Dongmin. Look at the metadata from the published images. He leaned closer, his shoulder pressing against her hip as he studied the screen. The casual intimacy of the contact still made her heart skip, even after weeks of growing closer. The timestamps, he murmured, focus sharpening. These were taken by my own security team. She confirmed, the ones you hired to investigate Seo Yeon. The photos were stored in our company's secure servers. His expression darkened. Another leak from inside. But not just any leak. Min-ji pulled up more data. The access logs show these files were downloaded using executive-level credentials. Someone on the board is working with Dong-min. Tae-hyun stood abruptly, pacing to the window. The morning sun cast his profile in sharp relief as he stared out at Seoul. I trusted them, all of them. The raw pain in his voice made Min-ji's chest ache. Without hesitation, she followed him, slipping her arms around his waist from behind. Their gesture of comfort, established that morning weeks ago when she'd first discovered the depth of the conspiracy. You trusted them because you're honorable, she said softly against his back. Their betrayal reflects on them, not you. His hands covered hers, squeezing gently. When did you become so wise? Around the same time you started letting me see behind your walls.